While attending a party on Christmas Eve, a New York cop has to foil a terrorist plot and save his wife. Special guests Dom Monfre and Daron from Board Games Are for Losers join us to discuss life-saving boobs, the cigarettes recommended by doctors, and the one thing that's more painful than stepping on broken glass. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfuckers! We're finding out if Die Hard stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says Gladiator with a glut, and Alan says as a father blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everybody. Merry Christmas and welcome to a very special episode of The Test of Time. My name is Alan Noah, and we have a full house here today. Joining me, of course, as always, is James Brief.
Hi, how are you? And, I'll address it. These two Jewish boys wishing you a Merry Christmas. That's a controversial take on this podcast episode, don't you think, Al?
Well, we'll get into it. But first, let's welcome our guests. We have another Jew, Daron, from Board Games Are for Losers. Welcome back to the show, Daron.
That's what I'm known for now, being Jewish.
Is that okay to say that publicly?
Yeah, that's fine.
And also, we have Dom Monfre coming back on the show.
Thank you so much for having me back.
I am really, really excited that you guys are here. This is the first time I believe we've ever had guests on a Christmas episode, and it's the first time we've ever had two guests that were both in the Five Timers Club, and this is just awesome. I'm just really glad that you guys are both here.
I didn't know what we were doing. You just invited me for dinner, and then you said we were doing podcasts? All right, I'm in. And it's going to be the 8 Timers or the 10 Timers Club soon, so get ready.
There is nothing to get ready for. Nothing happens. And while we had dinner before we started recording, Daron, you said that you didn't remember requesting coming on to talk about Die Hard?
Well, not at all. Famously, I never remembered what movies I've done on the podcast. I don't remember requesting this. I could see it having happened, at least the first one. I just don't remember it. So I didn't realize why I was being invited, but here I am. I'm in.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're here. Dom, you did remember requesting.
I did request this movie, yes.
And I'll give you credit because not only did you request it, but you followed up, which was smart, quite frankly, because I think we had left it as, yes, we'll have you on for a Christmas eventually. And you were like, no, this Christmas, let's do it. And thank you for doing that and making this happen.
I have some things to say about this movie, so.
Oh boy.
Okay, all right. Well, let's address the elephant in the room. Because every year on social media, it becomes a debate. I'm making air quotes. I'm using that term very loosely, but it becomes a thing of, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? It comes up every year like clockwork, and you had a take on this question, Dom. So I'll give you the microphone first, and we can go around and we can all weigh in. Just as a little bit of context, the director of this movie, John McTiernan, has said that this movie is a Christmas movie, whereas Bruce Willis has said that he does not consider it to be a Christmas movie.
That's not true. The director has actually said, I never meant for this to be a Christmas movie. If people associate it with Christmas, that's okay, but it is not a Christmas movie.
No, you should go back and read that full quote. He said it was never intended to be a Christmas movie, but then it became one.
Right. I did not take his comments there to be him saying it was a Christmas movie, saying that it has become one, not that he meant it as one, right? He literally says, I did not intend it to be a Christmas movie.
Okay.
So I think in his view, it's not a Christmas movie.
I don't care about his opinion. I care about the opinions of everyone in this room. Dom, what do you think? Where do you land on this?
Die Hard, to me, is not a Christmas movie. It takes place at Christmas. That is not the only requirement of a Christmas movie. What are the other requirements of a Christmas movie? Well, typically Santa or Jesus, one or the other, maybe both.
Okay.
Some lessons about Christmas, about how it's better to give than to receive, things like that.
Okay.
And I think that if you were to have a family gathering with some kids and somebody said, put on a Christmas movie, and you put Die Hard on, that some people would be upset.
I mean, probably some people would be upset with any movie you put on.
I think it would not meet their expectations.
Okay.
I sort of agree with Dom because I think you guys are slightly having different opinions on something, which is, what is the definition of a Christmas film? Does a Christmas film have to be, say, Tim Allen's The Santa Claus, where, it's obviously about Santa Claus and it takes place at that time? Or is it a film that happened, like Dom was mentioning, just happened to take place? And there's some references, I Have a Machine Gun, Ho, Ho, Ho. Movie like It's a Wonderful Life, which a lot of people do associate with a Christmas film, takes place around Christmas. But, I wouldn't say the central themes of the film are really about Christmas. I slightly disagree with Dom's definition. I don't think you necessarily need Santa Claus or anything supernatural. I think if it's, road trip trying to get home for Christmas, that's a Christmas film. Probably does involve at some point you wearing a Santa hat or something. But if you define it as a film that really Christmas is the theme, then you've got to go more that Die Hard wouldn't be. I think something like Christmas Vacation, there's a large theme of the Christmas lights and a Christmas bonus, and I think therefore that qualifies. I don't think of this as a Christmas film. I think of more Elf and Miracle on 34th Street. A violent film like Violent Night, that was definitely a Christmas film. But, this one, no. I think it's more an action film that does take place at Christmas. Similar to the sequel, Die Hard 2: Die Harder.
If I could add one thing there, nobody calls Die Hard 2 a Christmas movie, despite it taking place at Christmas.
Right, that is a valid point. But okay, Daron, what do you think?
All right, so lack of Jesus aside, here's my take on what makes a Christmas movie. I think it has to be central to the plot. So you could take out Christmas from Die Hard. You can make it any sort of holiday gathering or even a sort of celebration at the company, and the hostage takeover happens. So it's not central to the plot. Think of it this way. I'm going to go back to a movie that I remember reviewing on this podcast.
Okay.
Naked Gun, From the Files of Police Squad.
Very good.
Okay. That has baseball in it, right? Mm-hmm. That is part of the plot. It is not central to the plot. It is not a baseball movie.
Okay.
Major League, which you also reviewed on the podcast, is a baseball movie, central to the plot. So it's not a Christmas movie, that being Die Hard. However, if you like to watch it on Christmas, then it's a Christmas movie to you. I don't care, but in its heart, it really isn't.
Okay, so we have 3 votes that this is not a Christmas movie.
What do you think, Al? First, what do you think is a Christmas film, and what is your verdict on Die Hard?
Well, I think a Christmas movie is a movie that has Christmas built into it in some way. I don't think you need Santa or baby Jesus or grown-up Jesus or, middle-aged Jesus or any version of Jesus in order for it to qualify. I think that Die Hard is 100% definitely an action movie and 100% definitely a Christmas movie. It's 2 things. Lots of things are 2 things. You mentioned Elf. Elf is a Christmas movie and a fish out of water movie. Christmas Vacation is a Christmas movie and a slapstick comedy. A Christmas Story is a Christmas movie and a coming-of-age movie. All of these movies are Christmas movies and other kinds of movies at the same time. And every year no one says, is Christmas Vacation a Christmas movie or a slapstick movie? Let the debate rage in the comments. Why is it only Die Hard? Why is it not Die Hard 2? I don't fucking know, but it's such a stupid, pointless question where, of course it's a Christmas movie and an action movie. It contains multitudes. It has multiple genres. I just don't see why it's a conflict or a debate at all, quite frankly.
But there's no Jesus.
Actually, you can see Jesus in the movie. He is an extra at the holiday party at Nakatomi Plaza. That's not true. Don't come at me in the comments. But there are themes of Christmas in the movie. First off, what's Mrs. McClane or Gennaro, depending on the part of the movie? What's her name?
Holly.
Holly. I mean, come on, is that a coincidence?
Oh,
Yes, it's a coincidence. You are stretching.
No, it's not. There's a whole theme about coming together as a family. Variety recently put out a list of the best Christmas movies of all time, and Die Hard was on it.
Well, good for variety. But that being said, I will say this. We are doing Die Hard because it is our holiday Christmas episode, but we have not mentioned our little surprise for our listeners yet. This is not our first Die Hard episode, is it, Dal?
Well, it is our first episode, actually.
Yeah, correct, but it is not going to be our only Die Hard episode in the next coming weeks.
Right. So next week we are going to do a double feature of Die Hard 2 and Live Free or Die Hard, and then we will come back in the week after that to do Die Hard with a Vengeance. There's a reason for it. I will explain why we are doing it that way next week.
And Die Hard 5, aka A Good Day to Die Hard, that was filmed in 2013, so we're not going to be reviewing that film.
Question, do I have to come back for those other ones?
You do. You have agreed to it, so sorry.
Okay.
But let's give our listeners a recap of this movie, Die Hard. It's about NYPD officer John McClane, who is visiting his estranged wife Holly in Los Angeles. It's Christmas Eve, and Holly's company is hosting their holiday party at Nakatomi Plaza. Unfortunately, a group of terrorists led by the ruthless Hans Gruber crashes the party and holds the Nakatomi employees hostage. It's then up to McClane to save the day, which he does by taking out the terrorists one by one, all while barefoot, which makes it harder to fight terrorists, as we all know. And I would normally say, now, James, was this a big hit when it came out? But, I mean, everyone knows that this was a huge hit when it came out.
You know, everyone knows this was a huge hit, and it was, but I was kind of shocked at its box office take. I'd never heard of Bruce Willis when this movie came out. He was apparently a decently famous TV star on a decently successful show, Moonlighting, at the time, and then this was his whole break. But this film did come out, by the way, on July 15th, 1988. While it did make $83 million, which was a lot of money for a 1988 film, it never made it to number one. It made it to number 2 on its ninth week in the box office. Everyone saw it eventually in the theaters, but really, it was never a blockbuster weekend.
Was it still in the theaters in December?
The last run here is October 28th, 1988.
Well, I think we just settled the debate. It wasn't out at Christmas time, so it's not a Christmas movie. Boom, done. Podcast over.
They've re-released it now, this December, for the holiday season.
I said the podcast was over.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will see myself out, I guess. All right, but so what's your relationship with the movie, Daron? I'll pick you first.
I wouldn't have seen it in the theaters, but I've watched this on either HBO or throughout the years probably a dozen or more times. It's been a while since I've seen it, and one thing I didn't remember was, why wasn't he wearing shoes? I couldn't remember why he wasn't. They established that very early on.
Yeah. I also remembered that he was barefoot and kind of forgot about the why. But that is such great scripting where it comes up in the first scene. Oh, this is what you do. You take your shoes and socks off and you make a fist with your toes. He does that. And then it's not until considerably later in the film where the glass is shot out and he has to run across it and he's picking the glass shards out of his foot. That is set up very early on and paid off much, much later. You can kind of forget about it.
Yep.
But Dom, what's your relationship with the movie?
My dad didn't take me to movies like this until I was at least 12, so this was too early for me.
Okay.
I did watch it probably on VHS, maybe from Blockbuster, and then HBO whenever after.
Right. James, what about you?
I wonder if I saw this in the theater. Maybe, but I would have watched it with my older brother and sister at the time. Die Hard 2, Die Harder, that comes out, I think, in 1990.
Yeah.
And I had definitely seen this film several times when that had come out. How about you, Al? When did you first see this film, do you think?
I don't remember exactly when, but I'm fairly confident that I saw these movies out of order, and I believe that the first one I saw was Die Hard with a Vengeance. I remember specifically seeing that in the theater with my cousin Seth, and I remember he was really, really excited to take me, his little cousin, to go and see this movie that he really wanted to see. And I remember liking it. And I think it was after I saw Die Hard with a Vengeance that I then went back and saw Die Hard and Die Hard 2. So I think I was tardy to the party on this franchise. What? No, you don't like that?
No, I don't like it.
Oh, okay. I worked with a woman who used to say that all the time. She had a British accent. It was cuter when she said it.
Yeah, if you could do it with a British accent, then
Why don't you try it? Yeah, try it with a British accent, Al.
Toddy to the party?
Nope.
No,
That's way worse.
That was much, much worse somehow. We were talking about the whole barefoot thing. It starts on a plane, and you see that John McClane is carrying a gun on the plane, and then he says to the passenger who told him the barefoot trick, he's like, "Don't worry, I'm a cop." Can cops carry guns on planes now?
Yes, under certain circumstances. So if you're a cop like in California, you can fly within the state of California. You're authorized to do it. If you're assigned to a federal agency, then yes, you can carry because you have credentials that allow you to carry throughout the country. I don't think he was either one of those, so we just kind of go,
Okay. I mean, my son Eli called out while we were watching the movie that in the airport, people were just smoking everywhere. And he's like, people smoking in an airport? Like, well, yeah, in the 80s? Sure.
I'm surprised they weren't smoking on the plane.
Right, while holding a baby.
Right.
And the gun. It's kind of juggling everything.
Right. But there's a special section for that?
No, there wasn't. It was just the whole plane.
Smoking section or non-smoking section? Are you pregnant? There's two separate sections. I mean, it was wild. Like, you would see in these 1950s magazines, the doctor recommended cigarette. I mean, this is not the 80s. People knew in the 80s that smoking was bad, but yeah, a lot of smoking, and it always really stands out.
what cigarette do you recommend?
As a doctor?
I mean, I remember specifically, I bought my father a football program for when he was in college, and in there it was Winston cigarettes. It said that Winston had the lowest, quote, tar of any cigarette.
Right, could you imagine as your advertisement, we have the lowest amount of a thing that you put on asphalt.
Good point. Well, let's talk about the holiday party, which, by the way, is really fucked up of the Nakatomi Corporation to have their holiday party on Christmas Eve. That is not allowed. Definitely not now. I mean, maybe that happened in 88. I gotta think no.
I was with you. I wrote that as a note. I'm like, it was 5:30 on Christmas Eve, and they were starting the party. That's ridiculous.
That is insane. That is when you are with your family, not with your coworkers.
Yep.
It is so messed up that there's so many people here. There's no kids at this party. So this is a lot of adults drinking company booze.
Yeah, they're doing coke. The one couple was having sex when the bad guys came in. Yeah, this was a raging party.
And Holly, is she having an affair? You know, why is she putting her picture down? And, why is she going by Holly Gennaro?
So what did you think about when the bad guys make their kind of entry into Nakatomi Plaza?
This is the first time I ever noticed that the ambulance was with them.
Yeah, what I liked about it, it was simple. They just go in, they kill the guards, they lock down the building, they cut off the phone service, test of time, whatever, but they just lock everything down and they get the hostages under control. It was just simple, to the point.
They seemed very professional. They knew what they were doing. They just took care of it.
And like right away, Alan Rickman is just so charming. And I think he really nails the role of guy you love to hate. You know, again, with an accent, that always helps, right? An accent makes everything sound better. And he's just chewing the scenery and you hate him. He's a bad guy. He's the terrorist with a gun. And yet you still just kind of want to know more about this guy. You know, he's just kind of not lovable, but he's just intriguing.
I mean, there's so many things that some of the touches you don't need in this film. You don't need that conversation between Hans Gruber and Mr. Takashi, where he's talking about the famous suits he has, and I think Arafat has two himself, and he's talking about the miniatures. I don't think Hans Gruber was faking it. I think, honestly, Hans Gruber finds these miniatures fascinating, and there's a little bit of truth to what he's saying, that I could talk about men's fashion and architecture all day, but unfortunately we do have other business to discuss. And I like that this guy is classically educated, and it's little touches that make me like this bad guy better.
What I liked about Gruber was he established control so well with his initial address to the hostages, where he just recited all the facts about Takagi. It just matter-of-factly And you didn't really need the overabundance of gunfire that they fired off when they first took the hostages, because they shot a lot. It was like 800 rounds when they were first taking everybody hostage. But he establishes such good control right out of the gate.
Well, everyone was like doing coke for hours at that point, so maybe they really did need to fire that many rounds.
You don't. I've never taken a hostage that you know of.
Okay.
You just don't need to fire that many shots off.
This is off the record, right?
No, we are clearly talking into microphones.
Oh, God damn it.
It is very, very much on the record.
You know, there's a nice little another touch I loved in this film. I know that the first guy that McClane kills, the guy with the glasses, and I know it's the brother of the the final bad guy at the end of the film. But there's this really funny little sibling rivalry that goes on between the two of them. The guy with the glasses is frantically trying to very, very carefully clip some wires. His brother is chainsawing, and you can tell there's some urgency. I have no idea what's going on, but if Glasses Guy doesn't clip the wires exactly on time or before Chainsaw Guy gets through, something bad's gonna happen, or he's gonna get electrocuted or something. Big Brother is teasing him, Little Brother is sweating, and Big Brother kind of gives him a look like, fuck you, little bitch. And it's a fantastic little addition that is not needed in this film. You know, a bad guy, is getting ready to kill all the cops, and this is a scumbag, subtly looks at a Nestle's Crunch. I think that's hysterical, and it's a really cute touch to this film. And there's a lot of these touches that are really just little gems on the script.
That was improvised, grabbing the candy bar. Yeah. A lot of these bad guys weren't actors. I think a lot of them were just stunt guys, and some of them kind of didn't know the rules of how you're supposed to behave, and the guy just thought it would be funny of like, I'll just grab a chocolate bar, and it was funny, and they left it in, like, why not?
The stuntmen didn't apparently know how to speak German either, because they famously are speaking gibberish, and the fact that they're stuntmen and not just actors who might have put some effort into the role is kind of hilarious to me.
That makes sense to me. There's one plot hole I've never understood in this film, and that's at the famous scene where they shoot the glass, and Hans has this great idea because he has the information that Carl and the other guys don't have, that this cop guy is barefoot. So he screams at them in German, and then Carl's like, I don't understand what you're saying. And he goes, shoot the glass. Why would you understand it in the second language if you don't understand it in the German?
No, I thought it was just because it was loud. There was just a lot of gunshots going, and he didn't hear him the first time.
Then say it louder in German.
I guess, but I mean, then that's really more for the benefit of the audience. And also, it should be noted that Hans Gruber is not German. He is West German.
Oh, good.
Just, from a test of time perspective, that's a different country. So whatever, that's a very small detail. I did read, though, that the German in this movie was better than the German in Die Hard with a Vengeance, where it was apparently off the charts gibberish.
Which is hilarious that they got worse at it.
And I believe that Bruce Willis is more German than Alan Rickman, right? Because Alan Rickman is English and Bruce Willis was born in Germany, right?
Yeah, that's correct. He was born in Germany.
So,
deep cut.
Okay, right. Well,
West Germany.
Okay. I mean, so there you go. The chemistry that those two characters have, even though they're only on screen together a few times, Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman are just great together. And the hero-villain dynamic, I mean, we've seen that in a million different movies, but it really is just crystallized and perfect here.
Right. This is kind of the example for the movies that follow.
Well, do you mean Die Hard movies or action movies?
I think action movies in general. I think that there's a lot of fingerprints of this movie on other movies later on in history.
That is definitely true. Yeah.
Something I picked up on this recent watching of this film is I love Powell, Officer Powell. He is fantastic, and that is a role, while there's a payoff at the very, very last scene, that character does not need to be in this film at all. You need somebody that he gets the attention of the LAPD, but the real bond that they have, and that, of course, Powell's backstory that he shot a kid, and he has PTSD and all this, and he recovers from it at the end, and he's the hero. He's a great character that I'm not used to seeing that in a film like this.
They did a good job of not making him comic relief. They made him like an actual fleshed out character who's helping McClane. That's where the good use of the cops and then the FBI stops. Because the one part I really disliked about the movie is how cartoonish it became when you had Powell's lieutenant who was making all these quips, and then the FBI guys come. Now, there are some good lines there, obviously, but it just becomes cartoonishly bad. Cartoonishly bad.
I hear what you're saying, like Agent Johnson and Agent Johnson, no relation. That's funny. But the majority of the law enforcement characters in this movie, I agree with you, are cartoonish in their ineptitude, right?
Yes.
Like, it's not just that they make a mistake or two, which, hey, this is an unprecedented terrorist attack that these guys aren't used to. No, there's just a lot of sheer stupidity.
I wonder if some of that, though, is because John McClane is basically the best cop ever, right? Like, if you look at Sherlock Holmes, everybody else looked like an idiot compared to him because he was Sherlock Holmes. John McClane is the super cop.
Is he a super cop in this movie?
He might not be a super cop, but I would say that Officer Powell is equally as intelligent as McClane. He sees through all of this. He's like, I think this guy's a cop. You guys are doing an idiotic thing by, doing step by step in the anti-terrorism handbook, and he sees through a lot of stuff. McClane and Powell are definitely the two best law enforcement officers in this film.
I think it's fair to say, though, that McClane isn't a super cop in this movie because he is out of his element. And, there are moments of self-doubt where when the terrorists first break in, he flees. Now, that's smart. That makes sense. But you could also imagine any random person, any one of us, or any cop who's like, hey, I've got a gun, I'm just going to go in and stop this. That would have been the wrong choice, right. But his wife is in there. Innocent people are in there. Later, after Takagi is killed, he's like, I should have stopped it. Like, he's not sure exactly what to do. And I think the fact that he makes some mistakes and the fact that he is kind of improvising as he's going is kind of what makes him a quote-unquote everyman. And that word is thrown around a lot in Hollywood in general and action movies specifically, and even more specifically action movies that are trying to ape the Die Hard formula. But he is just a regular cop who's figuring shit out.
Yes, absolutely. I love that about this movie, especially compared to other films that we may or may not discuss, that he is human. He walks on broken glass with, no shoes. His feet get cut open. He's in pain. He's wincing. Like, you can feel the humanity there. I just mean that compared to everyone else, he's, to also foreshadow another movie, he's the only person there, and if he's not going to do it, who is?
Right.
He says that later on. That's what he is. That's what makes him the hero. So, compared to the other cops, he's the super cop in the situation. Not that he's invulnerable or anything like that. I do very much appreciate the humanity of the character in this.
Right. There was one thing I read that this movie is based on a novel called Nothing Lasts Forever. Apparently, in the novel, the hero is not named John McClane. I forget what his name is. But when he kills the first bad guy, instead of writing on the shirt, "Now I have a machine gun, ho, ho, ho," in the novel, he writes, "Now we have a machine gun," which is like, kind of next level smart. Yep. He's playing mind games. Now they don't know how many of them there are. Yep.
Did they write ho, ho, ho in the book? Because I don't think that was a Christmas book.
I don't know.
So, interesting thing about the novel is actually a sequel to a film from the 60s that Frank Sinatra was a star of.
Right.
And so he technically was contractually obliged to be offered the role of John McClane because it was based on the IP he had done. He turned it down. Die Hard 2, 3, and 4 are also, interestingly, based off of other screenplays and other things that were later fashioned into Die Hard films. Ironically, the least beloved and the least acclaimed film, A Good Day to Die Hard, the fifth film, is the only Die Hard film that was actually written to be a Die Hard film.
Yeah, so clearly that formula didn't work. They were better off adapting other things. I did just want to go back to Powell. The story with Powell is that he shot a kid. And they say shot. And they don't say killed. It just kind of leapt out at me today in, the world that we live in. I was like, I bet if they made this movie today, they would explicitly say that he shot a kid, but the kid was okay. Like in this movie, it is ambiguous. You don't know if he was shot and killed or shot and wounded or whatever. And nowadays they would say, he didn't kill him. Broken leg and he was fine. And of course, Powell was still traumatized by the event, and that's why he's not on patrol anymore, and that's fine. But they would have explicitly stated that.
I found that part of the plot unnecessary, really. Like, we don't really need to know his backstory. He's just a patrol guy. Why do we need to know that he shot a kid and then at the end of the movie, like, I didn't love it wrapping back in.
I mean, that storyline, like you said, did wrap back around. So I thought it was kind of like at the beginning, talking to the guy about balling your feet up into fists, just kind of a throw forward sort of thing. So it didn't have to be that, but I did like the way that it looped back in.
I just thought it was unnecessary. Like, why did he need to kill the last terrorist at the end? It was like the movie was over. Like, I just found it unnecessary. That's all.
That's actually one of my favorite things that I was noting in this one. I love that the final kill shot is not the hero. In fact, John McClane's a sitting duck. He dives on top of Holly to protect her, and Powell saves the day. And Powell said, I could never take my gun out again. So not only is he the hero here, but Powell redeems himself, and even personally must redeem himself. That, look, you never want to take out your gun if you don't have to, but this was the time absolutely you had to.
To take it to a lighter note, one thing about Officer Powell, this man ate a Twinkie on an open communication line. Is it okay if I eat a Twinkie into this mic while we're talking?
No.
You wouldn't hear it, right?
No.
Yep.
No.
I
no.
thought that was wildly
have
weird.
one here.
Oh, thank you so much.
No, that is a very, very good point. No, you absolutely cannot do that. And all the other cops and whoever's running the switchboard or whatever would absolutely fucking hate him. There's a Stevie Wonder joke about Powell when McClane's watching him drive, and he's kind of like taking a loop in front of Nakatomi Plaza. He's like, who's driving that car? Stevie Wonder. Which I guess you could argue still stands the test of time. I mean, Stevie Wonder's still around. He's less popular now than he was in the 80s. I don't know. You kind of mentioned the FBI agents earlier, Darren. I did notice that one of the Agent Johnsons is one of the Fratelli brothers from the Goonies. And there's actually another actor in this movie who is also in the Goonies. Anyone want to guess?
Mama Fratelli.
No. You would recognize her.
Joey Pants isn't there, is he?
No, not Joey Pants. Darren?
Sloth.
No, it's not Sloth. That was a terrible, terrible guess.
Is he going to be one of the random, rich guys from the country club or something?
No, it's Mrs. Walsh, who is, a moderately important character in the Goonies. She is the female anchor, the news anchor in this movie. Courtney spotted her. She's like, she looks familiar. She's the mom from the Goonies. And I was like, good eye, honey. That was really impressive. The whole thing with the other news anchor who's a prick, when you're talking about Powell being unnecessary, the whole news media thing and that reporter being a prick, I kind of thought that was maybe a little unnecessary. Not that it's a problem, but it just almost felt a little shoehorned.
I agree that it was shoehorned, but Atherton is so good at playing somebody you just want to punch in the face. How is he so good at it?
Right, with the other role being Ghostbusters, when he's the guy who basically causes the machine to melt down.
I mean, he does it through his direct actions.
Exactly. I don't need the qualifier there. Fair.
I agree with you completely, Al. I mean, while he is important in the plot because his investigative reporting is what leads Gruber to realize that McClane and Gennaro are related, but I could have totally done without him. I agree with you, Dom, that he's a great actor in that role, and if you need a guy to punch in the face, get William Atherton. I mean that complimentary to him as an actor. I really do. But I just think that this character, it's unnecessary. There's a million ways that they could have accidentally spilled the beans that Gennaro was related to John.
I mean, his picture was on her desk, just turned face down.
Right.
Just needed to flip it up.
And she's
But you got to find it to flip it up.
It was right there.
That's true, but she's talking out loud to other people about how she's related to John. Because at one point when Carl is like banging around and breaking the table, she goes, that's John. Only John can make someone that mad.
Right.
If anyone overheard it. Or some lady goes, they have John on the roof. Like, why are you telling this lady that you have John? And then, all you have to do, you have to look at Hans Gruber. He'll figure out in a second. While I like that actor, I didn't like that character. I agree with you, Al.
Well, I'm not saying that it's a problem. I just felt like it was maybe one thing too many. And I recently watched The Dark Knight with Eli, and that movie has so many different things happening. But there is like the media guy who's like, I know that Bruce Wayne is Batman. And that's like I don't even know what you would call it in that movie, like an H-level plot point. Like it's not very, very important. And I kind of forgot that it was there. But I felt like in that movie it was kind of woven into everything better, even though I just called it an H-level plot point, and it just kind of stuck out a little bit more in Die Hard.
It serves as one plot point. It's the only time in the trilogy where Bruce Wayne is the hero, and he saves that guy's life with his Lamborghini.
Right.
And then the guy realizes, oh, Bruce Wayne, or Batman, really is a hero, because he went out of his way to save me, and I was just about to out him. You could have taken that out, but I thought it did have a point in that trilogy.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about Holly. So Holly is played by Bonnie Bedelia, who I know best as the matriarch from Parenthood, the TV show. Don't know if any of you guys watch that.
No.
No? Okay.
I know her mostly as Mrs. Holly McClane.
Or Gennaro.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Gennaro.
There were criticisms about her character, that she's just kind of the damsel in distress, and that there is some anti-feminist messaging in here if you analyze it in a certain way, that, you know, she leaves her husband and she's going to earn her own money. No, that doesn't work, and she needs to be rescued by her husband and assume her married name. And it kind of makes sense to me. Like, I get that.
There's a lot of themes of the late 80s in this film like that. Also, the Nakatomi Plaza.
Yeah.
That would never have been the Japanese 10 years earlier.
Right. But it kind of plays into that fear from the 80s of, oh no, the Japanese are taking over.
They own 10% of Manhattan.
Right, exactly.
I think that Holly is one of the strongest characters in this film. You have some douche like Ellis who's like, listen, babe, I handle the $100 million murders. I could take these assholes. You sit down and I'll talk about this with the boys. Takagi couldn't handle anything. He didn't save anyone. But what does Holly do? She goes and goes, hey, assholes, we got a pregnant woman here. Like, can you help her out? They've killed people right in front of her. They can kill her, right, just for doing that. And they're in her office. Don't distract them at all. She tells them, you better get them into the bathrooms. I mean, she negotiates with Gruber. And Gruber actually, like, we're not going to let her sit in an office, but how about we bring a couch out to her? Is that okay? And she goes, that's adequate. I thought that was very powerful of her, and incredibly brave of that character to actually not just sit down and shut up.
Right? She took charge. She really did put her neck out.
Right, and because she was like number 2 in the company behind Takagi, so then after he was killed, then she was the next highest ranking person there.
Gruber asks her, like, what idiot put you in charge? He's like, you, when you killed Takagi.
And she tries to protect her boss, too, when Hans Gruber, who seemingly does not have a picture of Mr. Takagi, as he's walking around, you know, kind of eyeing all the Japanese men that they might be, this guy is looking for, she holds his hand, like, not as in, like, I'm here for you. She's like, no, shut up, don't say anything. But I disagree with that. I do not think in this film, at least, she is a damsel in distress in any way.
That's not to say that there's not some misogyny in the film.
Right.
Like nudie posters up in the work areas. That is something I remember from going to work with my dad in the 80s.
Yeah.
That is something that would never fly now.
Sure, that would be an HR complaint, definitely. Though that poster does serve a plot point where McClane uses that to kind of get his bearings, where, you know, he goes to whatever floor number it is, and then he leaves, and then he comes back and he kind of like taps it as like, okay, yeah, I remember I saw that when I was going this way. Because, yeah, this is the first time he's ever been in this building, let alone on some of these floors, and there's construction, and how the fuck is he supposed to know where he is? And that nudie poster does kind of serve as a helpful marker, basically.
Yeah, it needed to be there.
Right.
It couldn't be anything else.
Nope, no cat poster, no nothing. It had to be nudie.
Right, no, those were life-saving boobs.
Hang in there.
I think we need to talk about what the heist is. They're basically trying to get into this vault. It has, 7 layers of
Security. Yeah.
What their heist is fairly straightforward. They're trying to break into a vault. What I like is Gruber makes it clear that he's leading the FBI off by saying, hey, I want you to release these 12 terrorists around the world just to buy time.
Right.
But what it comes down to is this simple heist. The only thing I didn't like about it was that the 7th layer of security on the safe, it had to be that they had to shut off the power.
Right.
Everything else in the plot was under their control. They had the hacker who was able to get through the first 6 layers, and then they had to rely on the FBI following their playbook for terrorist attacks, which worked, but it was a chance. So that's the only thing I didn't like. They were leaving that up to chance.
The other problem with that is they cut off the power, and the 2 Agent Johnsons are laughing. They're like, oh, these guys are probably shitting in their pants right now. I mean, the lights go on instantly. They should know. Anyone could have told them this building has backup power. How do you have $650 million in bearer bonds and you have such brilliant security? There's no battery backup to this thing. I feel like there could have been some word they could have said that they overrode the backup. Maybe as Carl was chainsawing through some pipes, he could have said, oh, we just chainsawed through the backup, but we're still not going to be able to get it, the central on until they cut it from the main city. That's just something that bothered me.
I thought of that. The only explanation is that you would have to have gotten through the 6 layers first. That the 7th layer was, this fail safe. So they didn't need it to have a backup because how is anybody going to get through the first 6 layers? That's the only thing I could think of.
I guess, but by definition, the 7th one was an electromagnet, and it's plugged into the outlet in the wall, essentially. It just seems like you don't sever that connection. It seems like a plot hole that if I was building a safe to protect, $750 million, I would have that backup.
But you're not.
I'm not. That being said, another little subtle touch I loved in this film I never noticed till this time. I always focused on the $650 million in bearer bonds. Did you notice that the Takashi Corporation put Japanese cultural artifacts in there? And I thought that was amazing. Maybe there's some Picassos in there too or something.
Yeah, there's artwork in there.
What do you guys think of the scene where John confronts Hans and Hans quickly, like that, changes into the other character? I thought that was brilliant.
I think Hans needs to work on his American accent.
Well, fair point. I mean, I thought it was pretty good. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about Big Fish and how Ewan McGregor does a bad American Southern accent in that movie. And this scene in Die Hard was kind of a late addition. It was only because McTiernan or someone heard Alan Rickman doing his American accent and was like, oh, that's pretty good. We should work that in. They were trying to look for a way for McClane and Gruber to kind of meet before the climax. And I believe they actually had to then reshoot the scene where Gruber kills Takagi and make it so that McClane doesn't see Gruber. He can't, right? He can't know what he looks like. And I think the first time they shot it, he did see him, and then they had to go back and reshoot it where he's behind the table or whatever, so he doesn't see him.
That's actually really funny. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, right, kind of to your point, James, of all of the little details that maybe aren't important, but then turn out to be important, or just, building this world. It does play a role.
I did notice it's not the best American accent. I wonder if Alan Rickman, being such a great actor, if he was kind of purposely doing not a great American accent so that John McClane's going to figure this out. That's not a great American accent. I'm going to give this guy the fake gun loaded with blanks.
Well, I think that's not why McClane figures it out.
Why does he figure it out?
My guess would be just cop intuition. There's just something off about the guy. Apparently, there was an earlier version in the script where it was all about the watch. He notices that all of the bad guys have a certain brand of watches. He kind of observes that, and then he sees that that Gruber has that kind of watch, and then that was too subtle of a thing, so they kind of got rid of that, which is fine. I mean, you have to really be paying attention. But I think he just kind of senses that there's something off, and by handing him an unloaded gun, that's his way of testing the theory. And if it turns out that he doesn't try to shoot him in the back, okay, then great. He's a real hostage. Let's talk about the final showdown between Gruber and McClane. This is epic. This is the stuff of legend. They come face to face, and McClane has the gun taped to his back. He surrenders, but not really. That shot of Gruber falling to his death is just so iconic and perfect, and also apparently really hard to do, that they had to film it in multiple different takes with multiple cameras, and because he kept falling out of focus, because even in a controlled stunt fall, gravity is gravity, and there's only I think it was a second and a half where he's in focus, which is kind of why they do it in slow-mo and why they have to cut away so quickly. It's also just kind of funny that with all of the explosions and pyrotechnics and everything in this movie, that the guy falling was one of the more complicated shots, but it's perfect.
I think that shot was just excellent. The way that they spread it out like that really made you feel like he was falling for a long time.
It was simple in the fact that it didn't require giant explosions and big shootouts. It was the trickery. It was McClane outwitting Gruber. This was what this was. It was a battle of wits between the two. It wasn't necessarily the stronger person won. He outwitted him by taping the gun to his back, which I don't think is really allowed and not a good strategy, but it worked. So that's why I liked it too.
It's not allowed to have the gun taped to your back?
I don't think proper police protocol is to tape a gun to your back. I could be wrong. I don't know.
I mean, I'm not saying this from any personal experience whatsoever, but it's a good thing that he didn't have any back hair. Because, otherwise pulling that gun off would have been a very, very different experience. And you think stepping on broken glass is painful.
I suggest we try this.
I wouldn't know where to start.
Did you notice that when Gruber's holding onto Holly's hand, what she's really holding on to? Do you guys notice what that is? Mm-mm. It's the watch that Ellis gave her. So if it wasn't for Ellis, he probably would have slipped right off of her.
No, I thought it was from Takagi or the company. And so the watch is a symbol of her job and her
success.
Her corporate life. And
her leaving her family behind.
Exactly. When they break the watch, that is a symbol of her being reunited with her husband.
He literally saves her by taking off the symbol of her success. No, you don't need this. You're a family woman again.
Exactly.
You had mentioned all of the explosions. I forgot that for a solid 4 minutes, everything explodes. The tank is exploding the front wall. I forgot that the roof explodes.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Everything is just exploding left and right here.
The fourth floor explodes.
Right. Yeah. The exploding roof was kind of a plot point. Gruber's plan was to blow up the roof, make it look like they died. Because he said no one's going to be looking for a dead person that stole that much money. They're only going to be looking for a live person.
I got why they did it, and I actually thought it was smart for them to do that plot point to force them back down.
They were missing some dead bodies, though. I thought we reviewed a film, Swordfish, and there's a character that does a similar thing. The helicopter blows up, and they supposedly find the antagonist's body in there because he had put a dummy body that looks like him, a dead body, in that helicopter. This is not an atomic bomb. It's C4. They're going to recover all the bodies. They're going to find all the hostages, every single person missing from that Christmas party, and they're not going to find a single East German, West German person. They're not going to find any of these people. I thought that, they maybe in the beginning there would have been some bodies that they would have loaded into the roof or something.
I think it was a plan just to slow the FBI and the police down. It's going to take time, right? If you have a helicopter explosion or a roof explosion and there's 30 hostages there, it's going to take time to identify those bodies. Hopefully that gives them a day or two. Not hopefully. I don't want Gruber to escape. Oh, boy. But it gives them enough time to get away.
You're right, because even if they did put some bodies in, eventually they'll do quote-unquote dental records, because I don't know if they had DNA back then. But you're right, they probably would have figured out in time. It's $750 million. They're going to do some forensic.
That guy is East German, not West German.
Right.
You can tell that from the teeth?
Yes.
Probably, if there's fillings, you probably could tell East Germany from West Germany.
Okay, well, Dom, since you remembered requesting this movie, I'll let you go first, and then, Daron, you can go first next time. But, Dom, do you think that Die Hard stands the test of time?
I forgot how tense this movie was. It really isn't just an action movie. There's a lot of tension and a lot of cat and mouse. I really thought it was great. I watched this with Gemma's boyfriend, Saad. This is his first time watching it. He was like, I'm on the edge of my seat right now. I'm like, it's a really good movie. But all that said, as much as it does stand the test of time, I will say it is not a Christmas movie.
That
Just in case that was unclear.
That wasn't what I asked you now. I asked you that earlier. You made your opinion known. Okay, so you're saying it does stand the test of time.
I did say it stood the test of time.
Okay. Darren, what do you think?
So here's the things I liked about it, or I think stand the test of time. I think the terrorist plot, the heist, is tight. It makes sense. It doesn't require a lot of leaps of faith. It doesn't require a lot of outside influence other than the power being shut off. And other than the flaw you pointed out, James, I think it's relatively easy and simple to understand. The against all odds hero, McClane, is great as that. He's not like The Rock. Like, he's not like this overly pumped up action figure. He uses wit, he uses his strength, but he uses his intellect as a cop to defeat him. And then, of course, Alan Rickman, obviously as Hans Gruber, that's the best part of the movie. There's no doubt about it. The things I didn't like, again, I already talked about this, the buffoonery of the cops. The only saving grace about the FBI jokes is they did the Agent Johnson, or the other Agent Johnson, not related. Did you catch later in the movie where Agent Johnson radios in? He's like, hey, I need that helicopter. He's like, no, this is the other Agent Johnson. That gave me a little bit of payoff. But I didn't like when they're like, well, we're going to attack the roof. Well, how many hostages do you think we're going to lose? About 25%. I can live with that. No, that's so bad. I hated all of that. The amount of bullets that were shot and that McClane could reload simply at infinitum doesn't make any sense. But all that said, those are minor things. This movie definitely stands the test of time. I really enjoyed it. Hans Gruber, John McClane, they crushed it.
All right, 2 for 2. Al, what do you think? 1988 Die Hard, let's go.
Of course, this movie stands the test of time. And not that long ago, I forget what the episode was or the context, James, you pointed out that I mentioned this one book a lot on the podcast. It's a book about screenwriting, and I'm going to prove you right. I actually brought the book with me here tonight. It's called Writing Movies for Fun and Profit, and the fun and is crossed off. I brought it here tonight because of this one section that I remembered when I first read this book. It's on page 162. It's like, about how to write a script, and it says, watch Die Hard many times. And it's just a quick list of reasons why Die Hard is a great script. I'm just going to read a brief excerpt. I'll be quick about it, I promise. The hero, John McClane, has one flaw. He takes being a cop so seriously it's gotten in the way of his marriage. Pretty damn good flaw for your action movie's hero. He has a slightly goofy good buddy to talk to. 2 of them, actually, who in the end are the smartest guys around. The villain is just as smart and likable as the hero. The villain has a, quote, sidekick who's much more evil and hateable than he is. The hero and the villain each have tons of likable cohorts and supporting characters. And it goes on a little bit more than that, but it really sums up what's so great about this movie. And I think that in the course of this podcast, we've watched a lot of action movies, and a lot of them don't work for me. And this one really fucking works for me. And it's because of all of these important small details, these important elements. You have an everyman hero who's really an everyman. He gets the shit kicked out of him. You love him. You love the villain, but you hate the sidekick, and you just want to see him die. You hate Carl. Carl's the worst. Everyone hates Carl. It gets so many things right that, of course, this is one of the best action movies of all time. Of course, it's one of the best Christmas movies of all time. It deserves to be on both lists. It is endlessly entertaining. Of course, it stands the test of time. But James, what do you think? Do you think that Die Hard stands the test of time?
If it wasn't for some of these subtle touches that I talked about, and the casting of Alan Rickman and Bruce Willis, this film could have actually been more generic than I thought. But this film just works so well because it's a well-made film. There's a part where John McClane's walking by, and there's this weird circle that comes on the film. Of course, it's a lens flare. You guys know the scene I'm talking about. It's a real famous lens flare in Die Hard, and some filmmakers use it a little too much. Some people use it subtly, but I thought that was fascinating because I knew this was an artifact of filmmaking. And once in a while, when there's a horror movie and there's a blood spot on the lens of the camera, I find that stuff fascinating. It really, really is a little exciting to me when it's a little bit of a fourth wall break to remind you you're in a film. And small stuff like that. I really like it. I agree with you, Darren, that some of the humor around the cops, the FBI, is really silly. I mean, the whole roof just blew up. You have no idea how many people are there. 2 federal agents are dead and a pilot. And what does Lieutenant Dwayne Robinson say? He says a funny line, but I mean, are you fucking kidding me? He says, I guess we're going to need a few more FBI guys. Like, holy shit. Like, they're pieces of meat. I mean, I thought that was really weird. But this film is just so fun. All these years later, this film totally stands the test of time.
It really redefined the genre of action movies for the 80s.
Right, because before that there were like the 70s disaster movies, and then in the 80s you had
Rambo.
Right, you had
Predator.
Stallone and Schwarzenegger doing the big beefy,
Hans and Franz.
Right, and this movie you had a guy who is tiny compared to Stallone and Schwarzenegger.
He's a schlub. I mean, he's in better shape than I am, so this is no shade. Just saying that, like, compared to the contemporaries, he's a guy that walked off of a sitcom and into this movie.
Right.
I think that you might be onto something, that John McClane might be the first guy that was not a muscle, or at least in my life, that was not a muscle-bound action hero.
And it was also a big deal at the time that he was a TV star that was going to headline a major blockbuster movie. Now that line is basically gone, where movie stars do TV and TV stars do movies. But in the 80s, it was like, that's a big risk to put this guy who's only known for TV in a movie. Bruce Willis wasn't on some of those movie posters.
He did not have the credentials at all for this.
Right. And he made $5 million, which was a huge salary for a quote unquote unknown, because he was only on TV, so that kind of made him an unknown. Yeah, I mean, it was a career defining role for Bruce Willis. Absolutely. But that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we are going to come back to talk about the even movies in the Die Hard series, even in terms of numbers, I mean. Die Hard 2 and Live Free or Die Hard. Dom, Darren, you're coming back, right?
Absolutely.
No. Yes.
Good enough. Until then, we want to hear what you guys think about Die Hard being a Christmas movie. There's got to be some listeners who are going to take my side. Write to us at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. Merry Christmas, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.